Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Another Monday night live stream. Good to be with you all. We'll get started in about 1 minute. Make sure everybody has an opportunity to join. All right, let's go, guys. Welcome. Happy Monday to everybody. I hope you all had a great Mother's Day weekend. Those of you that celebrated Mother's Day, those of you who are mothers, happy Mother's Day. Good to be with you. All right, guys, let's go. Tonight's topic is going to be very interesting, okay? But before we get started with that, I want to just go through the process of just the logistics. For those of you who do not know, that's me, Cheston Bulgin, senior consultant, founder, CFO at By the Books Consulting. And we have a new group, a new community called the Truck Profit Academy. We just founded that a few weeks ago, a little less than 3 weeks ago. So if you're a part of that, welcome. If you're watching from somebody somewhere else, welcome. If you're part of the MPTA, welcome. It's good to be with you. This is how you reach us, 888-4BTB now. That's 888-428-2669. And this is the website, bythebooksconsultants.com. You can get there also by going to youraccountingsuperhero.com. All right, and this is my email address. If you ever have anything you need to reach out to me for, you can reach out to me directly here at cheston@bythebooksconsultants.com. All right, and man, peace, ease, and clarity is what we deliver. Peace, ease, and clarity. Peace, ease, and clarity, what we deliver. For the truck fleet owner, that somebody who owns a trucking company, we're the people that give you that peace, ease, and clarity. And what that delivers on the other side of that are results. Now, whatever that may look like for you, most times and more often than not, results look like, okay, you're making more money in your trucking company, and you're keeping more money in your trucking company, and you're developing assets and accumulating wealth through your trucking company. Okay, so that's what that delivers, guys. All right, and we just spoke about this, and I want to reiterate it. If you're not a part of the group yet, make sure you're a part of the group. Get signed up right now. There's no cost to this group right now at this moment. It may not be like that forever. Okay, it may not be like that forever, but right now it's free. So take advantage of the opportunity to join the free group. We have a lot of content that goes in there. We're actually in the process of creating more and more content in there so that you have the tools and the strategies that you need on a regular basis to stay focused on the things that count inside of your trucking company. And you want to go there by going to truckprofitacademy.com. That's truckprofitacademy.com. You can join right now for free to be a part of that community. All right. And that's, like I said, it's a limited time only. You can do that. All right. Now, quick disclaimer before we get started. The following is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered financial accounting or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, and or legal professional for specific advice. Guys, it is great to be with you today in this conversation. All right, I don't have you for long. I have you for less than an hour today. We want to get into making profitable decisions in trucking. This is an exciting topic because sometimes what we find is that you and I will think, like most of the people that we work with will think when they first come on, is like, well, there are certain circumstances that really are causing me not to be as profitable as what I want to be in the trucking industry. All right, and there's some truth to that. Don't get me wrong. There's some truth to that the situation, circumstances, economy, the lack of drivers that want to come into your fleet, those things could be there as a reality, okay? And it does not necessarily have to determine your reality in the trucking industry, because you and I can be focused on results We did a masterclass this weekend on intentions and goal setting, like how to set profitable goals in trucking, right? And it really comes down to what we call absolute focus. And that's the first step that we want to take in terms of making profitable decisions. Now, if you're in the group, we're actually posting that recording in that group. Either by tomorrow, it'll be in the group posted, that recording of the weekend masterclass on setting profitable goals in trucking, which is a conversation about absolute focus. Okay, so that's number one. We want to be there with that because nothing else really counts, guys. Nothing else really counts. We want to make sure that you're here for a purpose, and the purpose that you're here is for is to get the bottom line result in your company, and that's where you want to stay focused, not necessarily on the circumstances, the economy, situation, the drivers, whatever else that is. Those things may be there, but that's not your focus. Your focus is to actually make profitable decisions no matter what inside of what you do. All right, so that's step number one. Step number two, we want to strategize with precision. All right, so we're going to talk about this today specifically in a little bit of detail. Okay, strategizing with precision. All right. The other components of this is implementing with impact. We want to implement with impact and then track and optimize. We do these four things, guys, inside the trucking industry, and there's a high probability that you win if we stay here. Okay. Now, like I said, in this conversation, we're going to talk about how to strategize with precision and what does it mean to come up with a strategy. All right. So let's talk about that a little bit today. Just gonna go ahead and pin myself so you can all be with me. Okay. There we go. All right. So what does it really mean to strategize with precision? I find that when I get on calls with the people in the industry, like truckers that are in the industry, fleet owners that are in the industry, there are, I want to say complaints, right? That's what it is. It's complaints about what's going on. The fuel costs, fuel prices are high. Have a hard time finding good drivers that will actually do the job we ask them to do, consistently and reliably. The equipment keeps breaking down. Well, I don't have control over that necessarily, in terms of how we're going to keep the equipment moving. So they talk about these things, right? And then I hear some people talk about, man, I don't know exactly what to do when it comes to keeping more money in like my pocket, the bottom line results. And what I hear, man, is swirl, right? You call it a swirl. It's not laser focused. That's what I mean. It's not laser focused. Okay, like when I say laser focused, it means, okay, this is the outcome I want. How do I get it? Period. Let's stay there. Yeah, those things may be there, and we can deal with those things. We can have a plan for those things and build a structure for those things, but we're always talking about the structures and the plans to deal with those things. And part of that is a strategy. Okay, so strategy. When I talk about strategy, there's number one, it's an approach, right? This is what we're dealing with. Let me just make sure you guys can see this. And good. Looks like this is the right side. Sometimes when I do this, it's like backwards. I gotta make sure it's like showing up straight. All right. Now strategy is an approach. Now, well, what do you mean, Justin? Approach and like strategy is the approach. Well, I know dry van work. I used to do a lot of that in my trucking company, dry van work. Now there was a reason for me. I knew dry van. I was comfortable with it. I understood the market and everything and what to do. And there are other things that we may want to look into, like I might have wanted to look into besides just doing dry van work, right? Because that strategy may work for a certain period of time, a certain market, but it doesn't necessarily work in all markets. So what do we want to actually pivot to? Like, what is the approach we want to pivot to make sure that we're always going to be good, right? Now, that's the constant question that you want to ask yourself in the business. What that question does is it makes you able to pivot when the situations arise, right? So what if you did have like flatbed work that you could do instead of dry van? and people who are capable of doing flatbed work. Fantastic. You can pivot to that. Now, when the flatbed market doesn't do as well as it does, pivot back to dry van if that's doing better. Reefer, right? Reefer market goes up. It's went up a little bit in the last couple of weeks or so, trending upward, market-wise. Well, if we want to know that we're able to pivot to those things when the market shifts in that direction, right? So we want to have the approach. We want to understand, okay, what equipment type we're going to use, what lanes we're going to, this also deals with lanes, what lanes we're going to operate in, and why, right? We want to know those things, right? We also want to know what is going to be our primary drivers inside of the company. The primary driver is like the bread and butter. We call it the cash cow, the thing that we can fall back on consistently and reliably. What are we going to spend the most of our time doing that's going to constantly deliver the results we're looking to seek inside of the trucking company? So we want to come up with a strategy for that. Like, where do we want to be, right? Some of you on the call is like, yeah, I've been doing this work for a while. We have a good idea of how to move freight in this particular lane of equipment, in this particular lane in the country, right? So we're comfortable here. We know what we're doing here. We're familiar with it. Now, the idea is to ask the question, well, is that the best thing for the company? Right? So shifting it to move from working in the business to working on the business is key in this scenario. Well, what does it look like to work on the business here? Well, I'm going to be constantly looking at the reality of the situation. That's going to be my job as a fleet owner. Constantly looking at where the market is, constantly looking at, where the market is headed and making decisions like this. Now, a lot of the times we get stuck because we're not looking at the operation that way. So we want to strategize and we want to have the approach overall. We want to have that clear. And we want to understand month by month, quarter by quarter, what that's going to look like to us moving forward. Okay. So how do we know? Guys, there are so many things that we can look at in terms of understanding the market and when to pivot. Now, I've shared this, multiple occasions with you guys. Like, there's a way that we can look at the market. I'm going to pull this up so that we can see. But for one thing, we want to understand our rates, right? So what I'll do to get a quick understanding of what the rates are in the market is I'll go to that freight analytics. Okay. Now, make sure I share this with you guys. I'm going to come up with a strategy. Okay. Now, if we look, like, this is the nation, right? The regions that we're looking at here, and this is updated, on a weekly basis. So I can take a look. Well, where do I want to go to? What's paying the most? Well, we can see right off the bat the north, the Midwest and the Southwest regions. Those are the regions that are paying the most, per mile in dry van work right now, right? So if I were to come up with a strategy, even inside of the weekly plan, like if I were to come up with an objective for a week, I would be looking at this to come up with my objectives that fall within my strategy if I'm going to use dry van. Okay. So one, I'm using dry van. That's my overall approach is dry van work. Well, what am I going to do within that body? What's going to be my approach within the approach, my strategy? That's what I want to say. Right. So now we know we have an idea of where it is we can get the most on average, right? It's not going to work out like this in every single, lane, every single day, but this is an average, and we know what we can come to the table with in terms of negotiating power when it is we're planning our loads, right? We're planning loads. We have a real good idea of where we want to stay, right? If I can't get at least this average, well, I want to keep looking and producing relationships and rate cons that fall within what I expect to get in terms of this. So what I'm saying is when I set my goals for the week, When you set your goals for the week in the trucking industry, you want to set them based on what you can see in the market in terms of what you're getting, miles per gallon, freight wise. The other thing that we want to consider, and before we move on with this too, guys, we can look at this for flatbed. It also gives us supply and demand in the areas too, right? When you see flatbed rates are higher considerably, right? Now they may take more time to load up, and it may take more risk in terms of like tarping and everything else, and straps and everything else, but we want to see, like, does it make sense? And a lot of times it does make sense to position yourselves to be in like flatbed, or even like low boys, or partials, and all those things that flatbed make available that would not necessarily be available in drive-in. Right, so we can look at that market, and we see that market's higher. We can look at the reefer market here. We can see that that's higher. The only thing that I'll say about the DAT freight and analytics is that it does not give you and I a clear idea of what it is for like heavy haul, like oversized loads and all those other things that, hey, that could be a real good part of the strategy. Like, when is it that you're going to pivot to those high-paying markets, right? So if I can do anything in this call, in this session, is to shift the paradigm and say, okay, I don't have to necessarily stay where I am. I can pivot. I can do something new. I don't have to necessarily just be reacting to what the load boards say. I can go out here and say, okay, this is actually what I want based on what I see, right? And I can go out here and look for things that fall into that specific category. If it does not, well, what's going to be my next pivot? Is it going to be a pivot to another piece of equipment? Is it going to be a pivot to another market? What's it going to be? All right. So we can take a look at this on a regular basis. Now, what I recommend is checking in every single week when you're looking to do load planning, right? Checking in and say, okay, well, what is the market actually telling me this week? And then making your choices from there. It's an empowering place to be, is what I want to say. Okay. Now, if we know what we're getting, in terms of the markets, like right now we're looking at that. We're looking at the markets, and we know what we're getting, if we're doing dry-van versus flatbed versus reefer, and using just tools that are out here for free, that freight and analytics, well, how's that going to help with the load planning, right? So the idea here, guys, is to take our overall strategy, get clear on that, get clear on the overall strategy, our overall approach, and then take that into our load planning, okay? But how is this going to impact it, is what I want to ask. How would this impact load planning? Man, load planning is one of those things, man. It is a skill set. It can be frustrating sometimes to be out there looking for loads and just not really finding what it is that you want in the loads. And it could be also rewarding when you're really good at it. Like, if you have that sweet spot, that when you plan a certain amount of time ahead, but not too far ahead, that you can get the ideal of what you're looking for, what you want. All right. So what would you do here in terms of load planning? How would you build this out? Well, let's go to the next thing. Oh, before we do that, we want to also analyze costs. All right, this is all going to come together. Number one, cost, fuel costs, because we're thinking about moving freight. We want to understand what is going to be the impact of moving that freight cost-wise. I said a little while ago that reefer rates, they went up a little bit. Yeah, but then we got to take into account that reefers actually cost much more to run, a little bit more to run. So if it doesn't go up in proportion to the amount that it takes to run a reefer, then we want to take a look at those things, right? To make a sound decision, guys. So what are we looking at here? I'm going to bring this conversation to you guys. You guys have seen, if you ever watched me before on these calls, and if you've been with me for a few years on these calls, these sessions here specifically, you'll see this come up every so often, right? But what is this? What does this tell us? Somebody write in the chat, what are we looking at here, and how can this help? Write it in the chat for me, okay? Some of you, like on the call, I'm gonna call you out, like Baxter. Baxter hopped on and hopped off. Baxter with Taylor was on the line a little while ago. He was with me a couple of years back on one of these calls where he started talking about this little spike here, right? Back in 2022, right? Really before this spike happened. And this is what we're looking at here, guys, is fuel, right? And I do want you to engage. I want you to actually put in the chat what this is and what this means, right? As we're going over it, right? But some of you guys were with me 2 years ago when we were looking at this spike here, right? But what is this spike that we're looking at? Somebody let me know what this spike is. What are we talking about here? What are we looking at right here? Somebody can put it in the chat. Let me know. Has anybody ever seen this type of material before? Anybody ever look at this graph before? If you haven't, this is something that you probably want to do. Okay, you want to be in this in the know about the market conditions, right? Let's see, a couple of people responded in the chat. And Jennifer said no. Yep. Yes, sir. Weekly national fuel prices. Thank you, sir. That's what this is. Now, if you have not been looking at market data, is one of the biggest things that we can bring to the table and bring to the conversation. One of the biggest things that we can bring to the table and bring to the conversation is market data. You and I can make really strong decisions just by knowing what's happening in the market, okay? You can be profitable just by knowing what's happening in the market. Like just say, okay, well, fuel prices are this, freight prices are this in this particular market, in this region, and this type of equipment, I'm going to do this because this is my high probability outcome that I'm going to be as profitable as I can be by knowing these things. Now, if you're going blind, which is what a lot of us do, by the way, we go blind at this, then it's like a hope and a prayer, right? And then you deal with whatever there is to deal with in the market, and you don't even know. You think you're doing all that you can do. You're taking all these actions, but then at the end of the day, you're not as profitable. You're not getting as much result as what you'd like to, and then you get frustrated. But guess what? These are your choices. These are your opportunities, and you're just not making the choices, right? And you can by knowing this information, but not by knowing it and knowing exactly how to apply this information to your decision-making processes. So we have something that we use right now that I constantly keep building out, and eventually this is going to be won't tell nobody, all right? Eventually this is going to be a software in and of itself, this spreadsheet. Right? So we constantly keep building this out. We constantly keep looking at the information that you just saw in the market, and we put that all here on a spreadsheet. Say, okay, well, what does that mean for me as a truck fleet owner? If you own a trucking company, what does this actually mean for you? How can you use this information to make stronger decisions? Well, while we put it into a format like green is a go, red is a no. Green is a go, red is a no. Makes decision making pretty easy. I got you, Charlene. And Bax, I see you. I know you're checking it out on YouTube. I got you, brother. All right, now, green is a go, red is a no. Now, if you take a look, we're looking at like, well, fuel prices, they're actually down, right? And if we go back to the market data that we were just looking at, you see it. That's what it looks like. It's down from prior weeks. It's down, right? Just slightly down. It's 2.5% down from a couple of weeks ago. All right. But also, get this, fuel, if we're paying attention to markets, guys, and I just want to point this out, okay? I'm looking at this and I'm looking at trends. That's what I see. Now, if you're not familiar with how to read market trends, like this is what we call technical analysis in the market, like what price action is doing. Like this is significant, is what I want to say. Like this level here is a significant level, which is the $4 per gallon level in diesel. Okay. Now, if you see it, it rejected it back in between 2011 and 2014. It tried to get above this level, and it failed. 10 years ago, it failed miserably. It bounced back down to this previous substantial level. Okay. Now, why do I say it's a substantial level? Because for a long time, if we zoom in on this area here, it did not go above this. This was like a rejection point. And even this level here, like we see it, like trending above this $2 per gallon mark, was a mark where it had trouble getting above for a very long time. And all of a sudden, boom, it expanded above that back in 2005, right? But guess what? Since 2005, it never went below $2. Look at that. But that's how price action does. That's what it does, right? So again, this was a major level, right? And it did not go above this. It kind of tried, it went above it a little bit here, but then it was like, okay, no, come back down to this level. And then here again, it bounced at the previous level. And then here again, it made another run for above this mark of $4, right? And guess what? It went above $4, which means, man, that $4 level, that'll be another low, right? Because it was a previous place where it could not get beyond. It was previously known as what we call resistance. But usually what happens is when price goes above this resistance level, it'll come back down and use that previous resistance level as another low, another support zone, okay? And by the way, that's where we are right now, is what I want to say. So all that to say is that we're at a low for fuel, okay? So right now is a great opportunity, is what I want to say, to keep doing what you do and take advantage of the profitable moments right now, because we can expect fuel prices to continue to rise. Most likely from this low point, right? So get it in now, is what I want to say. Get it in now when you're running. Okay, so coming back to this, okay? Taking advantage of the opportunity, like understanding the strategy, right? Strategizing first. Then, once we understand like the approach, the overall strategy, the approach, coming here, like if you have something like this, like it'd be really good. And by the way, if you're in the Truck Profit Academy, this is in the classroom. You have access to this, all right, already, and you can download this spreadsheet, okay, and use it as we're using it here, all right. And green is a go, red is a no, all right. So now I'm taking a look. There's a lot more green when it comes to flatbed. It makes sense, all right, but not just it doesn't just necessarily make sense anywhere to run it. It makes sense to run it where you're going to be the most profitable. You know, top two, 1, 2, 3, top 3 rather, right? If you're running flatbed. Now, what if you're not? What if you're running dry van? Well, it's not like you can't necessarily be profitable in dry van. You can be, and the strategy, the approach rather, would be to maximize where you're running the lanes, right? Because this is where you're going to be the most profitable. 1, 2, and possibly 3. I get on the line with some people and they're running the loads up to like the Northeast and New York and all those other places. I'm like, man, why? Why would you do that to yourself? Right? You're not getting a whole lot of good rates coming out of there, and then you had to pay an arm and leg if you go over a bridge, right, up in the Northeast, or if you go on a toll road, like the Thruway or something like that up in New York, where you're paying a whole lot of extra, but then you're not really getting a whole lot of profitability to begin with, right? So you may get good loads coming out of like the Midwest going to New York. It's like, man, I get maybe $3, $4 a mile going out there, And then you're looking at getting only like 44 cents a mile or less coming back through this week, right? So you want to understand this, like if you have a broad's eye view of what's happening in terms of just looking at this information, guess what? Your decisions by default become sharper when you're planning loads. It no longer becomes an emotional thing, it becomes a tactical thing. Right? It no longer becomes an emotional thing, it becomes a tactical thing. Because sometimes we get like an emotionality behind it. Oh man, I can get $4 per mile going out to New York. But it doesn't make sense because now it's like, well, if I'm sitting in New York, I'm not necessarily getting that backhaul that's going to produce enough. And I'm going to end up paying a whole lot of tolls. Is it worth it for me? I may even be sitting out there, right? Because of the amount of volume, like of trucks per loads available, right? If we're looking at the market data, okay? It may make sense to stay in the sweet spot and keep doing daily loads in that sweet spot, right? Not only maximizing the profitability per load in the revenue, right, per load, but also reducing costs, right? Because now it's a matter of you're not really putting a whole lot of wear and tear. You're not going up these mountains, like the Northeast has a lot of mountains and hills, right? You're not doing all that stuff. You're staying on flat territory. You're not putting a lot of wear and tear on the vehicle, on the truck. And then you're able to consistently and reliably get the revenue that you're seeking, is what I want to say. Okay. Now, how do we plan for this and like taking this information and planning for it, right? Now, kind of cool here. We can come to this particular sheet and just play around. Play around with your costs, play around with like the lanes that you have, play around with the amount, like the rate cons that you're looking at and say, does that make sense to me? Yes or no, right? Even if you have factoring, you can put that into account or take that into account, right? Now, let's say per unit, let's say you're planning 1 unit, right? And you have a good driver that can do somewhere around 3,000 miles on average every single week, consistently, like and staying out, right? Sometimes more, sometimes less, but consistently, reliably, you can count on that driver to do 3,000 miles per week, right? And then you get a Raycon. In this example, a Raycon's like $5,000. But, and guess what? Raycon in and of itself has rated like the rate miles. We got to take into consideration that the rate miles are never the rate miles. Right? It's like always, it's always going to be more, right? It's like then what the rate con says, right? And then there's deadhead and all those other things that we deal with, right? So you can we put in a buffer here like 7% to 10% more so than what it is that you're going to be on the contract rate miles is what the actual miles are going to be. So we can actually get in reality about what it is that we're truly making per mile on a microeconomic level. Right? When it's a microeconomic level, meaning for your own company, for your own operation, right? So you can see this in detail, okay? Now, the other thing is, now once you understand the pay rate, like this example is 5,000, we can get really out in reality in terms of how much are you really going to be making, considering your driver costs, considering your fuel costs, if you have any scale, like if it's going to be a heavy load, you consider you have to scale it. And if you have tolls, you can put that in there too, right? And this in and of itself can be a really, really great tool to understand, okay, what is it that you're actually going to, what's going to be your major cost, right? Now, even this right here in and of itself, KPIs, right? So if I'm looking at KPIs and performance, I don't like my direct driver costs do not want to exceed 30%, right? So if you don't have these metrics in place, there's another thing that we're going to talk about all these things too, guys, in terms of measuring and what KPIs are in our conversations together, right? But understanding what it is specifically that that's good inside of the industry. What does good look like here inside of the industry, line by line? Well, you can understand whether or not this is going to be a yes or a no, right? So understanding this inside of the planning process, week by week, saying, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to create, and then measuring up against what the actual intended outcome is versus what you're seeing in the market is going to be key day by day. Okay. I'm telling you, if you do this consistently, reliably, you will make sound decisions based on data, not based on anything else, right? And if you take the time, like to train up, for example, to train up your load planners to understand what the goals are for the company in each division. Like guys, if you have like multiple divisions, like you have flatbed division, you have drive-in division, you have reefer division, you have a division that does permitted loads, hazmat loads, or whatever that looks like, then you want to have load planners understand the goals within those divisions, train them up to go by these metrics. So when they're going out and negotiating rates for their loads, they're coming to the table looking for these metrics that will line up with the actual strategy and the intention. Okay, is what I want to say. Right now, any of these metrics that go out of line, we can say, well, that's a no. It's not inside the intention. It's not inside the strategy. Move to the next one quickly. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time. Right, and once we get the metrics lining up to have it be profitable, well, then we can say yes, 100%, like all in, is what I want to say. All right, so there are a lot of things on this spreadsheet, guys. I will take one session, right? One session this year, I'll take one session, just go line by line with the spreadsheet and what it actually delivers. In this conversation, I want to leave you with the opportunity that it is to be somebody who is tactical and strategic about making load planning decisions so that you are profitable every step of the way. All right. At this stage, I want to just go over a couple of last things. I want to open it up for some Q&A. Okay. So I want to go through this real quick and play around with it so you can see. Like for this example, 3,000 miles, your best driver does this with one unit, and you're saying you're getting rate comp for 5,000. I'm looking at the numbers over here in the right-hand column for the percentage, of cost. Fuel rates is right around this 40% mark, is right around what I need it to be. That's good. The maintenance cost is low, right? It's like less than 15%. That's good. But this is high, right? So what I would do is here is like, I'll look for a load that falls into the, let's say what 6,000 for the 3,000 miles that we do. Now my metrics are where I need them to be, right? So if I'm going out in load planning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to consistently look for loads that fall within, okay, can I get $2 per mile on a rate con, which is what this is, or more. So that'd be my base of it for drive-in, which is, just right about the national average. If we take a look at the national average rate per mile for drive-in, it's at $1.96, $1.96. So what I would do in my planning process, I would look at areas in the Midwest, Southwest, and run lanes this way in the upcoming week to make sure that I'm going to get the most out of it, right? Now, as far as driver pay, we're looking at the rate that we have here. Like for our driver pay, we can actually manipulate this spreadsheet to show the driver cost per mile, which is what that is, right? Now, if we change the driver cost per mile here, we want to be able to change it over here as well, right? Because sometimes you guys are paying more than necessary market rates for your drivers, for your driver pay. And sometimes that even means you, right? Sometimes that even means you. What if you're the driver of your truck and you're still paying yourself above market driver rates? It doesn't serve you either, is what I want to say, right? Now, it doesn't serve you from the standpoint of tax purposes, is why it doesn't serve you, okay? So good. So I want to open the conversation up, guys. What are you getting out of this conversation? What do you see as the opportunity right now? If there's one thing that could be shifted inside of your operations, what could it be? Based on the conversation tonight. I want to hear from you. You can either type it in the chat or come off mic or raise your hand, either one of those. I'm going to go ahead and be with you here in the share. Let me see if you guys are chiming in from YouTube as well. All right, guys, if you have no questions, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this call up. All right, did you get some value out of this conversation is what I want to ask. Put a 1 in the chat if you did get some value. Put a 2 in the chat. And he was like, man, I don't even know what you're talking about, Justin. All right, so put one of those in the chat. Did you gain some value out of this conversation? Yes, yes, yes. All right, awesome. Awesome, awesome. Here's what I want you to do, okay? I want you to take this information. I want you to go ahead and if you're in the TPA Truck Profit Academy, I want you to take this, go to your spreadsheet, start using this on a regular basis. Start understanding what it is to look at the market data before you start making decisions, okay? Understand what it is to plan out loads profitably each and every time besides reacting on a load board, right? The next phase of this conversation is to be able to develop relationships, right? Develop relationships with contractors, with direct shippers. All right. So guys, great conversation, great talk to be inside of. I want you to really take this information that we give you on these calls and put it to use. Put it to use in your day-to-day, put it to use in your load planning, and produce the results that you want to produce. All right. With that being said, it's been great being with you guys. I will see you next time around. Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.